Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're here today in sort of a rush, and we apologize for how this may turn out. Hopefully it turns out well, and for all of these notes and things that I've got here on my desk, but we've been looking at some things that may be urgent for the time that we may be in right now and the time that we're coming into, that we really haven't had time to prepare like we have some of the other videos that we've done. And I hope you'll bear with me because we're going over a few things that, first of all, a little bit about the calendar, some about the priestly order, about some events of the times in the Great Tribulation that fit the Moedims during that time. We're going to go back and review a few things in the days of Noah and how the times that we're seeing that may be coming up parallels the days of Noah. So we're going to be jumping around on some different things, and bear with me because my mind jumps from one thing to the other, and hopefully we won't completely confuse you. One thing that I would like to say is that we've had quite a few calls and emails on the Enoch calendar, and there's some confusion. On the Enoch calendar, we've got some Enoch calendars out there that's getting to be as many Enoch versions of the Enoch calendar as there is the moon calendars. So if we can pull the calendar up, I'd like to show you a few things about the calendar. One thing that I'm noticing when I see different videos from some of these guys that are talking about the calendar is they're reading Enoch and bless them, they're trying to do everything they can to get it right, but I think the problem is they're reading Enoch, but they're not reading the Dead Sea Scrolls and placing the priestly order in the order on the calendar. And what I'm finding, if you look up at the calendar of the first month, the first day of Aviv, is to remember the first day of the month and the first day of the year always begins on the fourth day of creation. So, and your week begins 4 days earlier than that. So your week, your month, and your year doesn't begin simultaneously. And this is a reason why we're seeing Enoch calendars with the Sabbath on Tuesday, and we're seeing the second year in the calendar, instead of the day beginning at Wednesday, it begins at Thursday, and it's all over the place, just like we are with the moon calendars. So if you'll just remember, count 364, count 1. 364, count 1. If you count 364 days from that Wednesday, you will come back to the Tuesday before that Wednesday. That will be 364 days, count 1, and you'll start at Wednesday again. It's not that complicated. And like I say, I really appreciate the emails and some of the calls that we've been receiving. They've been quite enlightening. I can see that some of you all are really, you're taking a hold of the calendar and then the priestly order, because the priestly order is complicated. And there's more and more people out there that are looking at the priestly order and they're wanting to know more about it. Another thing I might mention is that we're getting calls and emails also. We're trying to adjust the Enoch calendar to a moon calendar. And if we've got 3 moon calendars out there and we've got 1 Gregorian calendar, and we're adjusting this calendar to that calendar, or to those calendars, I hope maybe I can clear this up a little bit, and we do get a lot of confusion on that, is that I'm a retired farm and land real estate appraiser. And one thing you learn in real estate is that you go out, if you've got a subject property and you're going to sell this property, you're going to do an appraisal on that property, you go out and find comparable sales to that property. And those sales aren't going to be completely comparable to that property, but you find the closest thing you possibly can to the property, to your subject. Then you make adjustments to your comparables instead of adjustments of your subject to your comparable. So your comparables are going to be the moon calendars. It's going to be the Gregorian calendar. So if you'll adjust those calendars, I really don't know how you do it based on a moon calendar, but most of what we're looking at is the people that we're getting emails from and calls from are they're trying to adjust it to a Gregorian calendar. And they're trying to adjust this calendar to that calendar. Adjust the Gregorian calendar to this calendar. And when you do that, you're going to eliminate a lot of confusion. We started on this priestly order, we started a little over a year ago. And if you can remember in some of our videos, well, let me say this before we get started. I've gotten to look more and more at this priestly order based on, I've had some people that have called me that are really knowledgeable on Bible prophecy. Now, I know a little bit about Bible prophecy, but not as much as these guys. And I'd like to thank them. His brother Larry is out in Tennessee, and I've had long telephone conversations with him in the last couple of weeks, and he's kind of enlightened me on some events and some stuff in Bible prophecy that I really hadn't looked at. And I'd like to thank Eddie Chumley. We spent some time on the phone with Eddie, and we had talked to him, at different times and different times when we gathered together and different events and what have you, and spent quite a bit of time with him on the phone about 6 months ago. And of course, he was adamant at that time that we were at the end of a Jubilee period. And I was adamant that no, we're at the beginning of a Jubilee period, not at the end of a Jubilee period. So what this has done, and especially talking to Larry in the last couple of weeks, is it's gotten me to look at this priestly order a little closer. And when I originally thought that we may be here in the first Smita in the 4th year of the priestly order, coming up this 4th year, that when I look at it a little closer, I'm seeing that we may be at the end, and most probably are, of the priestly order at the end of a Jubilee period instead of the beginning of a Jubilee period, which fits a closer time to what they're thinking prophecy-wise of the Messiah coming in at around a Jubilee or at the end of a Jubilee period, or the beginning of a Jubilee period. So to give you an idea, let me go to some stuff in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We've had a lot of people that have asked us, where can we get the Dead Sea Scrolls? I'd recommend this book. It's a new translation, The Dead Sea Scrolls, by Michael Wise, Martin A. Begg Jr., and Edward Cook. This is the non-biblical documents of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now you also have the biblical documents of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's not included in here. Now what we have is we've got a program called Accordance, and it's pretty pricey. As a matter of fact, it cost us $1,000, and it comes straight out of Jerusalem. And when they put the fragments, as they're putting the fragmented parts together, they send us updates of what we have. And the good part about this program is we can look up. We've got both the biblical and the non-biblical documents, and we can put, on our computer screen, we can even look back at the Hebrew of how it was written, the documents of how they were written originally. Most of the documents in the Dead Sea Scrolls were written in Hebrew, some in Aramaic and some in Greek, but very few in Aramaic and Greek. So we can look at this text before they added the vowel points. So it's been very helpful. But anyway, if you want a book without having to go to something that's going to be very pricey or pricey, I would recommend this book. It doesn't have all the information on it, but it has enough information that you can put together this priestly order. This book was written in 2005, so we're 2016 now, so this is about 11 years old. So we have some stuff on our computer that's not in the book, but at least it'll give you some idea on the Dead Sea Scrolls. But let me read you something, and here again I hope I don't confuse you, and this will kind of go back to, and this is what I didn't understand. I read this and I read this and I read this when I first started studying the priestly order. And the priestly order, I want to remind you that this priestly order is the same order that's in 1 Chronicles 24. It's the priestly order that was given to David in writing to give to his son Solomon. And as we said in some of the other videos, that he didn't start out with number 1 in the order, he started out with number 22. And number 22 means rewarded. And if we look at number 22, God made 22 works in the first week of creation. Jacob is the 22nd from Adam. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And if you look at, and I'm doing this off the top of my head before I look, I believe it's Luke chapter 1, verse 33. It says, and he will rule and reign over the house of Jacob forever. Now, you can look all the way through your Bible and you'll see that there's no other group of people other than the house of Jacob that he's going to rule and reign over forever. Now, he's going to rule and reign over, in the millennium for 1,000 years. But when we go into the 8th day, it's the house of Jacob. We've got to go back to Romans chapter 11. Romans chapter 11 says that we're either the original branches and we've been broken off of the olive tree, or we're wild branches and we've been grafted in. But we're grafted in, ladies and gentlemen, to the house of Jacob. So we may want to look at whose house we are. And we may want to look at this covenant, because when we partook of that bread and that wine, we partook of a covenant. We not only partook of salvation, we partook of a covenant. We said, I do to the covenant. Now, if you look in Jeremiah 31 through 33, he says, I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel, the house of Judah and the house of Israel, and I'll write my Torah law on their hearts. That's future tense. And now if we go to I believe it's Hebrews chapter 10, verse 12 through 16, and I'm paraphrasing, that the Messiah died once and for all to be that sacrifice. And he says in verse 16 that at that time he wrote the law on our hearts, the Torah on our hearts. That's past tense. Now if we look at Matthew, I believe it's 26:28, he said, take this bread and this wine. Do this in remembrance of me. This is the new covenant. The new covenant, that's present tense. He made a new covenant with us, and he wrote his covenant on our hearts. And part of that covenant, ladies and gentlemen, whether we want to admit it or not, is to keep the Sabbath day holy, keep his appointed times, and eat what we ought to be eating in the covenant if we want to live. And what does it say in, and I don't know exactly in 1 Corinthians, but it says we partake to examine ourselves, that some of us are taking of this covenant unworthily. That's one thing that I was doing years ago. I was sitting there partaking of the covenant and partaking of the bread and the wine, and I wasn't keeping his feast dates. I wasn't keeping his Sabbath days. And it says many of you are sick and some die because of this. And I look back for years when I was in the church, and I saw so many of our young men and women that were dying in the church, and I couldn't understand it because, they were full of faith, they were full of the Word, but why are they dying so early? Why are they sick all the time? And it tells us why. Now, if we go to Deuteronomy 28:58 through 61, let me turn to that now and let me read this. I may be getting off on a rabbit trail that I probably shouldn't have got on. 28:58 through 61. If thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this Torah law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and fearful name, Yahweh thy Elohim, then Yahweh will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long countenance, and sore sickness, and of long countenance. Moreover, he will bring upon thee all the diseases of Egypt, which thou wast afraid of, and they shall cleave unto thee. And every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this law, Torah, them will Yahweh bring upon thee until thou be destroyed. Is he the same yesterday, today, and forever? I'm God, I change not. He didn't change that. We've got to realize that when we partake of the bread and the wine, we're partaking of the covenant. Don't break the covenant. There's a difference between the book of the law and the book of the covenant. The book of the law, the covenant was placed inside the ark. The book of the law was placed outside, and you can see that in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in the Septuagint plain. And it was put there as a witness against us. That's what the Messiah nailed to the tree, not the covenant, the law, the animal sacrifices, everything that had to do with the law that was added because of transgression. Keep the covenant, keep the Sabbath days, keep his holy days, because he says in Leviticus 23, these are my feasts, not feast of the Jews, they're his feasts. For us, to bless us. And by all means, if you want to not die early, eat what he says to eat. That's a rabbit trail. Let's get back to what we were talking about. To give you an idea, and this is what I couldn't really, and I had to do a lot of praying. I'm just going to read you a little bit of this to give you an idea of the complication of this and why I couldn't understand it. And even the guys that wrote the book didn't understand what's being said here. And keep in mind that some of the Dead Sea Scrolls is fragmented. Some of them are really fragmented. Some of them are just barely fragmented, and you can't make out exactly all the words, but most of them. But the great part about it is when you get to this priestly order, everything's pretty well together, just barely fragmented. And it, Yahweh had to show us something. What do you say? Seal up the scroll, Daniel, for it won't be understood until the time of the end. And here it is, the time of the end. Scroll's been sealed up. It's been opened. How we can see all of this, and he's showing us things now at the end of the age that we didn't know before. But let me start out here, and I'll just read a little bit of this to give you an idea. Blessed, it's light on the 4th day of the week of the creation, on the 4th day of the priestly course of Gumul, Gamul. The conjunction of Shekinah is in the 4th year. The conjunction of Gimel is in the Sabbath year. The conjunction of Shekinah is in the 3rd year. The conjunction of Gimel is in the 6th year. The conjunction of Shekinah is in the 2nd year. The conjunction of Gimel is in the 5th year. The conjunction of Shekinah is a year after the Sabbath year. The conjunction of Gimel is in the 4th year. The conjunction of Shekinah is in the Sabbath year. The conjunction of Gimel is in the 3rd year. And this goes on and on and on through 6 Jubilee periods of these conjunctions of these 2 priests. And I said, I do not. Father Yahweh, you have got to show me. I do not have any idea what this means. And I'd go to bed at night and get on my knees and I'd pray and I'd ask him what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? So he relayed to me, he said, Jerry, if you'll write it down, then you'll understand it. So what I did, and if you'll remember, Gimel and Shekinah are priests. They're high priests in these orders. Gimel, number 22 in the order, means reward. Shekinah, number 10 in the order, and this is Shekinah Gimel, Shekinah Gimel, Shekinah Gimel. Number 10 in the order means Yah has dwelt. So I began to write, and it took me 3 days. And I'm going to give you an idea of what this is, and I don't see too many of these, and I don't know, but these are the Jubilee periods, and I started writing. For 3 days, I wrote. And this will kind of give you an idea, and this will give you an idea of why we can't get all of this on a screen. And we put up a screen earlier on the priestly order, and we can only put up 1/7 or 1/7 in this order. We couldn't put it all up. So this is what we've got to give you an idea, and it goes through 15,288 numbers changing places in these priestly orders until it reverts back to the original, to the point of beginning after the end of 6 Jubilees, and starts all over again with Gimel, Shekinah, Gimel, Shekinah, Gimel, Shekinah. So going back to what we talked about before, and we're talking about conjunctions of Gimel and Shekinah. The word conjunction, and the thing about the Dead Sea Scrolls is it doesn't give you a definition of conjunction. You've got to figure out, what does conjunction mean? And what we found at first, and we're finding this and we're spreading this out, is that we found full moons on these conjunctions starting the 1st of Aviv on these priests in the order of Shekinah and Shekinah and Gimel. And they show up every 4th year in the rotation through this priestly order. So conjunction could mean two things. Conjunction meaning there's a full moon on each time that these priests come into the order. And conjunction could also mean that it is in the year of when these priests come into order. They coincide. Now, we've heard the word conjunction used with conjunction in the way of a dark moon, but according to the Dead Sea Scrolls, conjunction is meaning something completely different, i.e. full moon. Now, this year in 2016, on the 1st of Aviv, we're going to see a full moon. So that means that we know two things. We know that once we see a full moon, we are either at the conjunction of Gamel, and we'll look up on the screen and we'll see this, and we'll show you these conjunctions. You'll see the conjunctions of these priests. And like I say, in 2013 there was a full moon, 2016 there will be full moon, and it looks like in 2019 is going to be a full moon. Now, at the time that we did this first, we didn't know that, but now we've expanded this to the point to where we've taken this over a 3 smid a year, and we found that there's full moons on the 1st of Aviv on each one of these. So that's where we were at that time. Now, we did put a video out here not too long ago on some events that could happen based on beginning the tribulation period on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. There's good evidence that it could start, at that time. It could start, I've looked at both ways. And most of the guys that really know a lot about Bible prophecy are saying, no, it'll most probably start in the Passover year. So that's what made me look at this order. And another thing that when we did look at this order, and a lot of people have been emailing me and asking me, if you can remember in one of our other videos, we put some events that happened, major biblical events, and I'd encourage you to go back and look at that video first before maybe you look at this, and you can see how these priests' names line up with the biblical events, and here again, that goes all the way from the day that Noah entered the ark until Yahweh shut the door on the ark, when they left Egypt, when they got to Mount Sinai, and when he gave the Torah at Mount Sinai, and when they crossed the Jordan. It just fit over and over and over because Jubilees, when Jubilees gives us a Jubilee year, a smid a year within that smid a year, and gives us a month and a day, we can calculate based on the priestly order who the priest is at that time, or who was on at that time. Now, what's really amazing, and I believe these priests are the same priest in the book of Revelation, who are the 24 elders that are setting up in the heavenlies. I believe that's who these are, because these names didn't show up until, around 2,000 years after creation, but yet these names and what they mean in Hebrew fit the events. And one thing that I thought and looked at is, if these events and what happened back in those days fit those events, then these same priests will most probably fit the same events on the days of his Moedim, his appointed times and seasons at the end of the age. And this is what we're finding. I thought that at that time, and I've had several people call and reiterate that to me. And Jerry, when are you going to do another video and kind of relate these events to the end of the age. So that's where we're at right now, and what we're doing. This go back, and I would encourage you, first of all, we're going to put our email address up on this video, and if you'll send us an email, we've got some priestly orders that we can send to you. We've got some calendars we can send to you, because people have been asking for the priestly order, been asking for the calendars, and now we've got some together where we can send them to you. We also have the plans for the sundial, and please don't ask us. We've had several people that have asked, well, you make me a sundial. No, we've got the plans, and we didn't make the sundial. We have. Another brother that lives about 100 miles east of us made him a sundial and us a sundial, but he's a teacher, and he hasn't really been called to make sundials, and I don't think I have either, because I really don't have the skills to do it. But we do have the plans. So, and if you would, when you send an email and we send this back, and I realize that we're having people from different groups all over the world that are emailing and calling. Just one person from one group, so we won't have to send out tons of emails to on the priestly order and the calendars, and then you make copies for the rest of your people, because everybody's not really going to understand the priestly order, but I have some people out there that are really interested in the priestly order. So let's go to where, and let me give you a little background of how we arrived at this, is that the priestly order from creation, and based on what we can put together with the book of Jubilees, is that it's accurate up until the time that the children of Israel crossed over the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and that would have been the 50th Jubilee. Then we lost track. The only thing we can do now is maybe backtrack and hope that we can pick something up. Let me give you an idea of why we did lose track, and it says here in Jubilees why we will make you lose track, and this is what happened. And I'm going to read this in Jubilees, it looks like chapter 6, verse 32. Start with 32. And commanded thou the children of Israel that they should observe the years according to this reckoning, 164 days. And these will constitute a complete year. And they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts. For everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feast. But if they do neglect to not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order, and they will neglect their ordinances, and all the children of Israel will forget. They will forget, and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new months and seasons and Sabbaths, and they will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and from henceforth shall I declare it unto thee, and it is not of my own devising, for the book lieth written before me, and on the heavenly tables the division of days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles, after their error and after their ignorance. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon. Hello? How it disturbeth the seasons, and come in from year to year 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order, and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day, and they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to months, Sabbaths, feasts, and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to thee, that thou mayest testify to them. For after thy death thy children will disturb them, so they will not make the year 364 days only. For this reason they will go wrong as to the new months, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. That's exactly what we did. We made observations of the moon, and we lost it. Now the only thing we can do here again, as we go back to the times when they were doing it right, and we know that's a known of what Jubilee year it was when they crossed the Jordan. And then we lose it in between there. Now, I've had several people, they're trying to put Jubilees together, and they're trying to do it by moon calendar, and they're trying to do this, and I'm trying to do that. And that goes back to the same thing I said a while ago. If you're going to make that adjustment to the moon calendar, you better be making the adjustment of the moon calendar to this calendar. Then you'll know where you're at. And I don't profess to know exactly where we're at. Maybe close to where we're at. But let me tell you, and I've had, several people, Jerry, try to put this together and see where you think we may be. And I'm not saying, thus saith the Lord, and we should be ready at all moedim and all times for these events to happen. But there's some interesting things here. But what we did to arrive at this, and this goes back to the Gregorian calendar time, and it goes back all the way to the Messiah's time, was calculated with the Gregorian calendar. So a lot of what we can look at, and I've looked at this before, is 30 A.D. is the most probably, and what I can see even with the priestly order, the time of the crucifixion. 30 A.D., Passover 30 A.D. But another thing I see, and I've always thought, well, we're probably looking at a couple of thousand years after that, and then we're going to look at the millennial reign. And the millennial reign, as it says in Hosea, it talks about the second day, and it'll raise us up as the third day, and a day is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. And we've all looked at that in Bible prophecy, and looking at that 6,000th year, in the beginning of the millennium, and a Jubilee period, and so we've looked at that. Now, another thing that I see is that most probably his ministry started in 27. So if it started in 27, then I'm looking at, well, is that 2,000 years from 27? Or is that 2,000 years from 30? So what I did is I put both of them together, and if we can, we'll go back to Luke chapter 4. If we can go to Luke chapter 4. And this is right after he came out of the wilderness and being tempted by the devil. And I'm going to read this out of the King James Bible, and it's going to, it's going to say Lord, and I'm just going to read it for what it says. I prefer to call him something different than Lord. Master, teacher, Jehovah, Yahushua. But anyway, we'll read it the way it says. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captive, and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And it goes down to verse 21, and it says, and he began to say unto them, this day is this scripture fulfilled in your ears. So, he said this at the first of his ministry, not at the end. So, what we're looking at, I took from both places. And what I had to do here again is I had to do some adjustments, and being in the real estate business and an appraiser, I've made a lot of adjustments, believe me, is that I had to adjust the calendars. And from the year 27 into the year 2016 was 1989 years. And what I found is that I had to add a day and a quarter to each one of those years to adjust it to the 364-day calendar. So in essence, that came out right on 7 years difference. So when I added the 7 years to that Gregorian calendar, it came up to actuality of 1996, which would throw us in the priestly order. And if you look at the priestly order of where I believe that we are, and now I've shuffled my priestly order to, I've got to find it again, where we may be, and you'll see this on the screen. We're going to show this on the screen, and we'll screen down. Well, the best thing is to go back to the first and count 4 down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The end of a Jubilee, with the last year of the Shemitah being in 2019 and the Jubilee being in 2020. This is coming up, and if you'll remember, we're going to go to the 4th year. That would be our 1996. It'd be the 4th year in the Shemitah, and we started this Shemitah out with Shekinah. In 2013, there was a full moon on Shekinah, and we go to 2022, which will be 2016. There's a full moon again on Gamel, and we go to 2019. We got Shekinah again, and we got a full moon again. What's interesting is this 7 years is bracketed by Shekinah. Shekinah at the beginning, Shekinah at the end. Shekinah means Yah has dwelt with these people in the wilderness, in the tabernacle. He dwells with us at the Feast of Tabernacles. This may be the first clue that we may want to look at. If we'll look up here on the chart, we'll see that the first of Aviv starts out with number 22 in the Or's Gamal. And then we're going to give you, like I say, we've got the definition in Hebrew, and we've taken this from Strong's, of the definitions of these words in the Hebrew. throughout all of these 24 priests. And we also have some information in here about some other meanings that were taken from some other Hebrew documents of the meaning of the words, which is very interesting. If we look at number 22 in the order, his name is Gamal, like we say. He starts out the first of the year in the priestly order, in Aviv 1. And by the way, the first day of Aviv 1 is March the 23rd on your calendar, on your Gregorian calendar. So you can count from there and count the feast days, so you'll know where we're at. So we start out with Gamel in the order. And his name means rewarded. If you will think about it, when we talked about in the days of Noah in one of the other DVDs, videos, Gamal was on the first day of the second month when Noah entered the ark. Now, if we look at the book of Jubilees and we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the first of the first, the first of the fourth, the first of the seventh, and the first of the 10th are days of remembrance. You'll see these days showing up in Jubilees and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what did the Messiah say? As the days of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man be. So that's what got me to looking at the days of Noah. And the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, if we look back and really study, Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed on the first day of the fourth month. So these days are very significant. But these days parallel. Now, Noah finished the ark on the first day of the first month. He went into the ark on the first day of the second month. Then he closed the door on the 17th day. He didn't close it. Yahweh closed the door on the 17th day of the second month. But let's look at this in parallel. We start out at Gamel. We started out Gamel with the days of Noah. Now let's go down to the next priest in the order. His name, and he's number 23 in the order, and that'll be up on the screen. Deliah. And his name means Yah has delivered. So what did he do in the days of Noah? He delivered. And it also means to properly dangle, so let down as a bucket, drawing out of water. What did he do? He drew Noah out of the water. Now let's look at the parallel. Let's look at this parallel of what we're looking at in the book of Revelation. And if you've got your Bibles, turn with me to Revelation chapter 12. And we'll go right down the line. We've got Delilah next. He's number 23. Then we'll go to number 24 in the order, and let's see what number 24 means. Number 24 is Mazziah. He will be on at Passover this year, or if the calculations are right. Mazziah. He'll be on, and these are the priests that will be on in the order as far as we can tell, and we don't know exact, but this is what it looks like. And we're seeing a lot of signs that this could be, we could be there. But Mazziah, in the sense of protection, rescue of Yah, to decrease, make few, become few, short of time. What does the Messiah say? He said, for the elect's sake, He'll shorten the time. He's on. During Passover, no leavened bread week. He's the one that's on. Let's look at this a little closer. And I know this is symbolic, but let's go to chapter 12, verse 15. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he may cause her to be carried away of the flood. Now, what we're looking at in the book of Revelation, we have three things that give us an indication of the beginning of the tribulation. The Antichrist shows up, the two witnesses show up, the woman goes into the wilderness. And I'd urge you once again, ladies and gentlemen, if we're grafted into the house of Jacob, we're the woman. There's not a separation between church, woman, church, and Israel. We're either Israel or we aren't. We're grafted in. So you may want to be this woman. You may want to think about that. Keep the covenant. But she's brought in to the wilderness, and like a flood out of his mouth, the Antichrist, the serpent, spews out of his mouth, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. So what have we got when we go back up here to Mazziah? To let down, drawing out of water. Drawing out of water, flood, water out of flood. So let's go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. This is Mazziah, number 24 in the order, and on that week. What does it say? And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, and to her place where she is nourished for a time, times, and a half time from the face of the serpent. Well, Mazziah means in the sense of protection. Rescue of Yah. Yahweh is a refuge. Do a word study on the word refuge. Look what else it means. Decrease. Make few. Well, we know that there's going to be only a few. It's going to be this woman. And also it means in the sense of protection, rescue of Yah. And it also means to short of time. And then we go to another meaning, and it means figuratively to save by flight, gather self, to flee. Well, what does it say? And the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she may fly into the wilderness, where she is nourished for a time and a half time. She goes out by flight, flee. Fits that description of this priest on the Passover in the first week of unleavened bread. It's very interesting. Paralleling the days of Noah. Now let's go to the next priest in the order, and the next priest in the order is number 1. After the wilderness, a woman goes into the wilderness, we've got number 1 in the order shows up. She's protected. Now we have Jehoshaphat is in the order. What does Jehoshaphat mean? We'll look at the screen. Jehovah will contend. Judgment. Woman goes into the wilderness, we have judgment. Is this coincidence? I don't think so. Now, let's fast forward 3.5 years. Well, before that, let's go down to Shavuot, and that's in the 12th week. And we see number 9 in the order, and that's in the 12th week. That's in the same year, so let's look and see who number 9 is in the order. Let's make sure this is number 9. 9, 12, we're going to 12. Number 9. Yahushua. It's number 9 in the order. Jehovah saved. Well, that would certainly fit a feast date on that year. Jehovah saved. What is he going to do? He's going to save his people. Now let's fast forward 3.5 years from that time, and let's go to week number 27, and that week number 27 is Yom Teruah, Feast of Trumpets. So we see that number 12 is in the order. So we go to number 12, see who he is. His name is Jacob. Jacob means he will raise. Jacob is the same priest that was on at the time that the Messiah was raised from the dead. Now he shows up again at the last trumpet of a series of trumpets at the resurrection. Is that, and that's 1,260 days away. Woman's protected in the wilderness. Trumpet blows, there's a resurrection. Very interesting. And if we'll look at the order, and I didn't have that to show to you now, but if you'll look in the order, and I believe that the Messiah was born, and this I found this in the priestly order on the Feast of Atonement. And I looked at the Feast of Atonement, and we're not going to show that on the screen because that's not what we're trying to teach today, but I'm going to go over that real quick. Is that on the Feast of Atonement, on a particular year, number 5, and this is in the order, and here again we're not here to teach it. Malchijah is the high priest on the Feast of Atonement. Malchijah is also, it says, a king of, appointed by Yah, and it's the same root word as Melchizedek. Who are they looking for? They were looking for Melchizedek. Same root word, and we know the Messiah was Melchizedek. So then his ministry begins, and I believe it most probably began at the Feast of Tabernacles. And then we count 33 years from that day, and we come up to the Feast of Passover. And the high priest at that time, at Passover, 33 years later, is Jacob, number 12 in the order, he will raise. A coincidence? And then when you go down to Shavuot, which is the Feast of Pentecost, at that same year, the high priest's name was Jachin, means he will establish. If we can remember, Yahweh gave all of the covenants to his people on Shavuot, on Pentecost. Well, the new covenant was manifested at Shavuot that year. The Torah written on the hearts, they began to speak with other tongues. What's going to happen when we all get in line and in one accord and keep Shavuot on the day that we're supposed to keep it on? Maybe we'll have an outpouring of the Spirit. Be wonderful. But anyway, I got off on a rabbit trail. Then what we've done is we've gone to the Feast of Trumpets, going back. He will raise. And then we go to the next week after the resurrection. We go to number 13 in the order. His name is Hoopla. He's the one that was in the order when Yahweh gave the Torah at Mount Sinai under the canopy, the wedding feast. Well, we're going to have a wedding. We're going to have a wedding right after the trumpet's blown and the dead are raised. Kind of looks that way. Then we have number 14 in the order that comes right after that in the next week. And his name is Jehoshabab. Comes on at Tabernacles. What does he say? Seed of our father. To set down specifically to judge. Well, do we have the last bowl judgments to be poured out? After the seventh trumpet and the woman's protected and we have a resurrection, then he pours out his wrath on the wicked. Judgment, number 14. All in the orders that they're supposed to be in. Having said that, I'm kind of going to go back to some things that I've been taught, and I'm learning that I've still got to unlearn a lot of things to learn what he's trying to teach me. Is that I've always been taught that the trumpet is going to be blown on the Jubilee year, which would be the first year of the first Shemitah after the 49 years on the Feast of Atonement. Just kind of look at this. This is, if you would, turn to Leviticus chapter 25, and let's begin at chapter 9. Then thou shalt cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land and to all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee to you, and ye shall return every man into his possession, and ye shall return every man into his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of thy vine undressed. For it is the Jubilee, it shall be holy unto you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In the year of this Jubilee, ye shall return every man into his possession. Okay, based on what I've read before, I'd look at, well, we're blowing this trumpet in the Jubilee year at the Feast of Atonement. Chapter 25, verse 9. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. These words, trumpet, after the word trumpet, of the Jubilee is not in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Of the Jubilee is not in the Septuagint. But yet in our Masoretic text, we got of the Jubilee. Well, Houston, we've got a problem. The Dead Sea Scrolls tells us that trumpet was blown on the 49th year and the last year of that Shemitah of that Jubilee. And the year coming up, which would be the next year into the next Shemitah, the 50th year, we proclaim the Jubilee, but we blow the trump at a different time. One thing that, and it's not one thing, I've seen that some of the scholars that have looked at the Dead Sea Scrolls, and one thing they're saying, you know what, one thing about it, if they're hidden for over 2,000 years, they can't mess with them. Can't mess with our scriptures. There's a scripture in, I believe it's in Jeremiah 8, verse 8. I don't know. Well, let's go there real quick. Let's see if that's it. If it's not, Jeremiah 8. Yeah. How do ye say we are wise, and the law of Yahweh is with us? Lo, certainly in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain. Beware of the lying pen of the scribes. In the book, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it says that they've done violence to my Torah. Do not add to or take away from the words written in this book. We see that in Deuteronomy. We see that in Revelation. I would submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, based on what I've been studying and studying a lot of these ancient texts, they've already done that to us. They've added to and they've taken away. And one thing that one of the scholars that I'd heard that really studies this, here again, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I said it a while ago, was if it's hidden, they can't mess with it. So it's gotten me to look, and once you look at this, and when this trumpet was actually of the Jubilee, then it fits it being blown here at this last year in this Shemitah. And then the judgment begins on the ungodly, that trumpet is blown here instead of the next year. So what it's doing, it's making these things fit and make sense instead of trying to put a puzzle together that's really complicated. Another thing that we looked at. And like I say, I've got so many notes here. We're trying to put this together in haste. I hope you've followed along with us. There's and I've got this written down in my Bible because it's not in this book, but it's in what we talked about of the computer program that's been picked up later. Those people at Qumran, and I believe it was most likely the Zadok priest, the priest that should have been in the temple. What did the Messiah say? The kingdom of God suffers violence, and the violent take it by force. These guys were kind of kicked out, but boy, they knew who the Messiah was. You can tell by the writings. They talked about the teacher of righteousness, and we've lost some years of where the Messiah may have been, and then we look at John the Baptist, and John the Baptist was from the line of the Zadok priest through Zechariah, and I believe that when he baptized the immersed the Messiah in water, that the priesthood changed to the Melchizedek priesthood. And one thing that these guys at Qumran were looking for, they were looking for the coming of Melchizedek. And these documents that were there were ancient documents that they were either copying or recopying, or documents that they were writing. And a lot of this writing took place before the Messiah even showed up. But these are some characteristics that they gave of who this Melchizedek would be when he shows up. They say he will be the I Am, and he will atone for the sons of light. He will be a divine being. So in order to be Melchizedek, you've got to be a divine being. In the songs of David, and I might mention here, there's so many songs and psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls that David wrote that never ended up in our scripture, and it makes you wonder why the ones that talked about the 364 days in a year didn't show up. And then the Psalms of the Sabbath sacrifice, that gives you exactly what days the Sabbath fall on this calendar, not a moon calendar, exactly what days, gives you the numbers of the days and when they would fall. It's amazing. But anyway, don't try to make this fit on your moon calendars, because the Messiah wasn't on a moon calendar. Now let's go on. Songs of David. He's a godlike being. He will be anointed of the Spirit. This is the characteristics of Melchizedek. He will be the one who announces salvation, is the one of whom it is written, and this is before it's written, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, Yahweh's favor. We just read that a while ago in Luke chapter 4, when he stood up and read that. This was written before he stood up and did this. The one that is cut off after 62 weeks. Well, you guys that study prophecy, who's the one that was cut off after 62 weeks? Melchizedek, Messiah. One in one, all the same. So, if we can just remember that we're priests, we're going to be priests and kings with him in the order of Melchizedek. And he is Melchizedek. Going back to this, priestly order, maybe it's this year coming up. That's the reason why we did this in haste. Maybe it's not. If we've missed, if we're looking at 4 years later, because we said these priests come on in 4-year increments with full moons, that's our known. It's like an algebraic equation with x being the unknown. The only problem is that we have these as knowns and we have a lot of unknowns, but it could be backed up another 4 years based on what, if that 2,000 years is after his ministry. We may have made some mistakes in calculation. It's just something that, whatever it is, it's close. And, talking with Eddie and talking with Brother Larry out in Tennessee, they really believe that we're at the end of a Jubilee cycle. And you can tell, we've got a lot of people that are made observations of the moon that says that this year was a Smitty year. Well, according to this, it can't be a Smitty year, because if it's a Smitty year, it's got to we've got to have a full moon. And I guess that would make 2015 maybe a Smitty year, this year a Jubilee year. I've heard maybe the Pope is declaring this a Jubilee year. Well, it can't be a Jubilee year based on his calendar. Now, it may be a Jubilee based on man's calendar, but according to the priestly order and the calendar, this is not the Jubilee year, and this is not a Smitty year. Last year wasn't a Smitty year. Hope you've enjoyed, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. It's been good visiting with you. Have a good day. Shalom.